Welcome to National Pension Partners, where retirement planning meets peace of mind. Today, we're diving into the 412(e)(3 plan, also known as a fully insured pension plan. This isn't just any retirement plan. It's the gold standard for stability and guaranteed benefits. How does it work? Simple. It's funded exclusively by life insurance and annuity contracts. This means no market risks, no actuarial assumptions, just ironclad guarantees. Think of it like this. You're a small business owner who hates surprises. The 412(e)(3 plan gives you predictable, stable contributions every year. Your future benefits are backed by insurance contracts, so you know exactly what you're getting. No guesswork, no headaches. But there's more. These plans are designed to maximize your contributions and offer significant tax advantages. And with National Pension Partners, you're not just getting a plan, you're getting a team of experts, attorneys, CPAs, actuaries, all dedicated to making your retirement as secure as possible. We provide personalized consulting, ensuring that your plan is tailored to your specific needs. Best part, initial consultations and proposals are absolutely free. $0, zero commitment. So if you want a retirement plan that's as reliable as your morning coffee, head over to nationalpensions.com. With the 412(e)(3 plan, your future is in safe hands. Retirement planning never sounded so thrilling. Perfect for small business owners who like their finances as predictable as Monday mornings. Stable contributions, ironclad guarantees, and serious tax advantages. It's the trifecta of financial security. And with National Pension Partners, you get a team of brainiacs, attorneys, CPAs, actuaries, ensuring your retirement is as secure as Fort Knox. Oh, did we mention the free consultations? That's right. You get a personalized expert proposal with $0 down. So, if you want a retirement plan that's as reliable as your morning coffee, head over to nationalpensions.com. Because when it comes to your future, boring is the new exciting. Retirement planning never sounded so thrilling. For more details, check out National Pension Partners at nationalpensions.com. Retirement planning never sounded so thrilling.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Economics with the Honorable David M. Walker, the former Comptroller General of the United States. And today we're going to be discussing the Russia-Ukraine, Trump meeting Putin in Alaska. Of course, he's meeting Zelensky very shortly. With that, we're going to bring the Honorable David M. Walker. He only has a short period of time today to discuss what he sees with the two superpower meetings. So, David, I don't know if you followed this, but this is a pretty important meeting between two of the superpowers of the world. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I watched the press conference live last Friday where President Trump and President Putin met after their 3-hour meeting, which involved 3 persons for each side, including the presidents. And I must say that I was incredibly disappointed with that press briefing. You can't call it a press conference because they didn't take any questions. First, President Trump allowed President Putin to speak first when we were the host, which was, in my view, totally inappropriate. He didn't really say anything of consequence other than one thing Trump liked, which was confirmed that he would have invaded Ukraine had Trump been president of the United States back when 22, but beyond that, consequence. Then the president addressed, the press and the world, frankly, live, and he had nothing of consequence to say. There was no real discussion of what had been agreed to or what had not been agreed to. But today, we see the president is meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky, who's president of Ukraine. There are a number of other European leaders that are going to be part of the meeting. to be able to talk about what's the way forward to try to achieve a peace.
Well, it looks like we there you go, David, you're back. You just,
Somebody,
okay.
so in any event, let me tell you what I think, might be a basis under which they can reach agreement, although both sides will be disappointed. One, I can't see Zelensky giving up land. I can see a truce. I can see where they say, look, we don't agree we don't agree to cede any of the land that you currently occupy, including Crimea, but we will just draw lines where troops are, maybe with modest adjustments, and say, okay, we're going to stop fighting, and this is where the lines are. We don't agree that we're giving up any land. You don't agree you're giving up any land, but we're agreeing that we're going to stop fighting, if you will. And then secondly, there's now on the table security guarantees, not through NATO, because Ukraine is, in my view, not going to be able to join NATO because it has to be unanimous, and there's not unanimous agreement among NATO nations to allow Ukraine to join, in part because they're at war. And the last thing you want to do is trigger Article 5, immediately when one of the nations is at war, although arguably you can make an argument to say that Article 5 only applies on a prospective basis. But in any event, so it looks like what they're talking about is to try to come up with a security agreement that would involve the United States and several other major NATO countries, but separate and distinct from NATO itself. In other words, it would be a side agreement between the United States and several other major European countries to guarantee the security of Ukraine if this conflict can come to an end. The real key there is it a treaty? Because there was already an agreement between the UK, the United States, and Russia when Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons in the 90s, the so-called Budapest Agreement, which was not a treaty, was just an agreement that was only as good as the parties who signed it, who did not bind the respective nations. And you saw that it was not effective when Russia took over Crimea in 2014 and the United States did nothing and the UK did nothing. And Russia was a signatory to the agreement. So they did something, but it was directly contrary to what they had agreed to do as part of the Budapest Agreement. So it would need to take the form of a treaty, which would mean that the Senate would have to weigh in on it. I think depending upon how it's structured, that's, it's very possible for the Senate to approve something like that in order to end this conflict. But the terms that Russia is seeking, which is actually for Ukraine to cede land, I think is absurd and not appropriate. And I've said all along that I thought it would end somewhat like the Korean conflict did. There was never a peace agreement. It was just an armistice. They agreed to stop fighting. They agreed that the lines were were drawn. Basically where the troops ended up quit fighting. They created a DMZ. There are troops on both sides to try to be able to keep the peace. Yet to be decided whether or not there would be actual peacekeeping forces that would be deployed to the United States, to Ukraine. Historically, the United States has not deployed peacekeeping forces in connection with other past conflicts, at least to the extent that they're done through the United Nations. And that's a question mark how this would be done if there are going to be any peacekeeping forces. So we'll see what happens today. But I think it's important that we recognize that, my biggest concern is that Putin cannot afford to lose. And as long as he's in power, he'll continue to fight unless an agreement can be reached. And if he ever feared that he was at risk of losing, My biggest concern that he would lose tactical nuclear weapons. And if he did that, that would turn the tide very quickly, but it would also open up Pandora's box. And I hope that we'll never see that day.
Okay, we'll start bringing our panel. We'll start with Dr. Jonathan Lockwood, who's an expert in military affairs. We'll bring him in. He's also on the show with Ukraine, Russia, and China. What are your thoughts about this meeting, Dr. John?
Well, first of all, let me say that Dave has given an excellent summation of the situation, and basically shows that we have two nations with politically irreconcilable objectives. Russia does not believe that Ukraine has a right to exist. Ukraine wants nothing to do with Russia and wants to insert its sovereignty and independence from Russia. And the interesting thing is that Dave is correct in that Putin cannot afford to continue the war. He cannot afford to lose the war, but he cannot really win the war. He is, in effect, caught in the equivalent of a Texas hailstorm. He cannot run away, he cannot hide, and he cannot make it stop. So he is caught in the chess equivalent that my colleague Sasha would say. He was caught in the chess equivalent of Zugzwang, forced move. He has no good moves. So he is in a dilemma of his own making. So right now, Ukraine is the one, I would contend, that has the only truly independent card that it can play. And Ukraine has demonstrated several times during this war that it is capable of carrying out tactical surprises and operational surprises on the Russian military, doing much more than they ever expected against the Russian military. In my opinion, the true center of gravity of this war is the Crimea. And the center of gravity within the Crimea is the Kerch Bridge, which the Ukrainians have managed to strike several times. And if they should succeed in destroying the Kerch Bridge and rendering it permanently inoperable, that will cut off both the logistical and reinforcement link between Russia and Crimea. It will isolate the Russian occupiers of Crimea, and that will create the necessary prerequisite for the Ukrainians to launch their own decisive counteroffensive to retake the Crimea and cut off and force the surrender of the Russian occupiers. Should that occur, that would be the one unmistakable military defeat that the Russians would not be able to explain away. They cannot say, we really meant to do that. And that would, in fact, lay the necessary prerequisite for what Dave Walker believes to be the most likely outcome, a ceasefire. They would have to have some decisive military action which demonstrates forcibly to Russia and the world that Russia cannot achieve through military conquest or even by diplomatic bullying what it cannot achieve on the battlefield. So that is where I see the true thing taking place, because the European allies and Ukraine have both shown that they are not willing to accede to Russia's demands for what in effect amounts to a diplomatic equivalent of unconditional surrender. They might as well just agree to cease to exist. And any agreement which rewards Russia in any visible way for having started the conflict only lays the groundwork for a future war. And that, in fact, is my position.
That sounds interesting. We're going to bring in Sasha Starr, who's the host of the Ukraine-Russia show. No, that's not me calling you Sasha. You were here.
Yeah.
Well, what I'd like to emphasize is that a lot of people are watching the same things and coming to completely different conclusions. So every stage has to be somehow explained, and only then all people can come to some meaningful evaluation of this or that. So let's see a few simple things. How meeting started, how meeting ended. It started with the red carpet. The B-2 with some F-35s made their appearance, quite pleasant for Trump and maybe not so pleasant for Putin. But although maybe Putin's curiosity was rewarded because he finally saw B-2, which just recently bombed his lovely country of Iran. So That's the start of the meeting. However, how meeting ended? It ended with Dave, you're absolutely right about this so-called press conference. It was neither press, it was neither conference. Then a state dinner or something that usually follows all this diplomatic events, especially between countries like US and Russia, which don't meet so frequently. I ventured, I even looked at the menu of this dinner. I'll tell you that the servants who will eat all these leftovers, they will be rewarded handsomely. It will be fabulous food. They will definitely enjoy it, but not Putin and his friends. So that's how the meeting ended. So now, when people are trying to evaluate who is the winner of this meeting, Trump or Putin, you can say that they're both winners, same as you can say that they're both losers. Now, in important measure of this meeting is one, that for 7 actually or 8.5 months, Trump, from the very beginning, he was saying that number one step is the 30 days ceasefire. And then during the 30 days, you arranged everything else. Interestingly enough, that both Zelensky and Trump were against it. Zelensky and Putin. Putin was accusing Zelensky that they will get so much new weapons from the West, so they will have time to reorganize and so on. Same thing Zelensky was saying, that in 30 days, Putin will get more recruits, he will do mobilization, he will do so many wonderful things. So it doesn't suit Zelensky. So Trump was doing his job on Zelensky, including this famous meeting in the White House. So finally, Zelensky agreed and signed that he is for the 30-day ceasefire. Therefore, not only Trump, but Zelensky was on his side. Then Europeans came along. So now everybody is together, 30-day ceasefire, and then we go to next stage. Here comes Putin to Alaska. And he was able in this, hour and a half to convince Trump that this is the wrong way. It's the wrong way. Why do we do 30 days? And then what, another fighting? No, let's do everything now together. Okay, let's do ceasefire and do it all. No, we don't need ceasefire. Let's continue the fight. Let me murder even more Ukrainians. That's what I have to do. This is my priority number one when I get up. First thing I'm asking, how many more Ukrainians were killed last night? This is Putin in his element. Continue fighting, continue killing people, and then you can talk for the next 6 months, maybe 18 months about possible peace, how it will be accomplished, and so on and on and on. So therefore, you can see, and Trump agrees to that. So after talking about 8.5 months about one way of doing this, convincing Zelensky and all European partners of the right way to do it, in an hour and a half, Putin completely changed his mind. Why Putin was so successful of doing that? Because the only real reason Trump is doing all these meetings and running around is to get Nobel Peace Prize. That's all what's on his mind. Whether it will be 30-day ceasefire or 180-day ceasefire or no ceasefire at all or no end of the war, as long as the war will end one way or another, that's all he needs. If it's according to Zelensky and the Europeans and his own plan, it's fine. If it's according to the Putin's plan and all others have to change their plans, just fine, as long as it will get him closer to the Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, maybe he'll get one. In the meantime, maybe he'll get one. But in the meantime, we're going to bring in Brian Crater, who's from the United States of America, is a member of NAFA in his debut here. Brian, you get to weigh on world politics now. So what are your thoughts about this summit?
Well, thank you, Nick. I think obviously the summit, the world is watching, and I'm not going to pretend to be a geopolitical analyst by any means. I'm more of an economic guy. And if we don't mind, Dave, I do have a question for you while we have you. You did bring up peacekeeping forces not being on the Korean border, maybe an agreement being similar to that. Do you think Trump may have been sort of a genius in the way that he did the minerals deal, giving us a incentive to maybe put peacekeeping troops within Ukraine to keep a watchful eye over any agreement that might be struck at noon today?
Well, I think the idea of the possibility of peacekeeping troops is something that will be considered. My personal view, it's highly unlikely that the United States will deploy peacekeeping troops. Historically, we haven't done that. To the extent that there are, with one exception, and that one exception was Bosnia-Herzegovina. We did do it in that particular circumstance. Historically, we've preferred to be able to provide funding to support peacekeeping troops, and that we've allowed other countries to be able to send their troops. It's kind of a win-win situation. We don't put our troops in harm's way. We provide the financial resources, which helps the countries that end up providing those troops. In many cases, they can end up being, not major countries. I do think that we would end up providing, other kinds of support with regard to, intelligence and other types of activities, if you will. But, I still can't see how there's going to be a formal concession of land. I can see how there could be an agreement that you're where you are, we're where we are, we're going to stop fighting. We want to make sure that there's a lasting ceasefire, and we also want to make sure that Russia doesn't try to take over more territory after this agreement is reached. And that's why you have to have some type of an enforceable, security guarantee. And that's why you'd probably want to have some type of troops on the ground, but hopefully not U.S. troops.
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on the geopolitics of this, but I kind of come from a generation now that's grown up with nothing but war here, war there. As I'm only a year younger than the country that we are talking about anyway. But I just find it almost impossible, in my opinion. I don't know the military aspect of this either. How we can force non-allied troops out of a region, the eastern part of Ukraine, southeastern part of Ukraine, Crimea. What would that process even look like? I mean, after a treaty is signed, how is that kind of an advantageous move or anything with Russia? How is that even possible, I guess?
Fine. The bottom line is you can't. Okay. They've got to voluntarily do it. And if they don't agree to voluntarily do it, then it gets you to what I'm suggesting is maybe there are modest adjustments to the lines, okay, that are agreed to by both parties. Maybe there's an agreement to say, look, we don't cede our land to you, but we want to quit fighting. And therefore you can stay where you are, but we're not ceding our land to you. And by the way, you're responsible for rebuilding the section that you destroyed, that you're in. But at the same point in time, we don't trust you. And therefore we want to make sure that we've got some meaningful security guarantees that you don't end up trying to restart the conflict and take over more land going forward. My view all along was that when this started, Russia wanted to accomplish several things. One, they wanted to occupy large parts of eastern Ukraine that are mineral rich, okay? And that there are a lot of Russian-speaking people in that part of Ukraine. They wanted to create a land bridge to Crimea, all right, which was another objective. And their other objective was they wanted to topple the current government and put in a friendly government similar to what exists in Belarus, where Belarus is an independent country, but they've got the president of Belarus is very pro-Russia. I think that's what they wanted. They didn't want to take over the entire country because they wanted to have a buffer to NATO. So that way they would have gotten the land they wanted. They would have created the land bridge. They would have taken over the areas that are largely Russian speaking. They're in many cases rich with minerals and other types of natural resources. And they would get a friendly government in Kyiv. I think that's what their objective was. And so they're going to try to get as much of that as they can.
We're going to go to Asia now and bring in Dr. Sharif from Bangladesh.
It could be that they try to insist to say that new elections, new presidential elections. That doesn't mean that Zelensky couldn't run and he couldn't. But, I'm surprised we haven't heard anything about that. And I think if we do hear anything about that, that would probably be something that would be at the last minute.
Yeah. Dr. Sharif, what's the situation over in Asia?
Okay, thank you. This is actually very interesting discussions, and I'm sure my countries or my audience, they will be very interested to know more about this Trump, Putin, and the Ukraine issues. But World Talent Economic Forum, we already get some awarded from UNESCO for our contributions in innovation, research, and global citizen. One point I think everybody is missing, and I just want to add this point. Around the world, every big corporations try to eat small company. Every big country try to dominate small country. Every rich people try to dominate small people. The same thing we are observing in this discussion or this dialogue. I'm sorry to say that Trump and Putin, both of them, actually dominating Ukraine. We have to raise voice for Ukraine. We have to protect a small country. We never discuss even in these dialogues, why Putin kills so much of Ukrainian people? Why they attack these things? How many people lose their life? How many people actually lose their house, economical things, and all of the things? What will be the future of the people of the Ukraine? Nobody is discussing. Nobody is care about the small country. So I propose the small country like Bangladesh, like Ukraine, like Nepal, like Rwanda, Burundi, whatever. We need to go for strong alignment, what we are trying to do through World Talent Economic Forum. Because the big people, they do not want to listen. The big country, they do not want to listen. The big, powerful giant, they do not think about the life. They do not think. Nobody is discussing, hey, Putin, why you kill so much of people in Ukraine? Their life is valuable. So that is important. Human lives is valuable. And Putin, in terms of my point of view, is a criminal. How USA invite in their land a criminal, a war criminal? How come you do that? You are most civilized people in the world. You are most educated people in the world. You are most powerful people in the world, and you can do whatever you want. And you can invite a criminal in your country. So we are doing the same wrong things.
Yeah.
So I do not know. What is the humanity? We need to focus on humanity, and I request all of the small country, make alignment, work together. Because big people, they never think about the small people. Big country, they never think about the small country. That is the outcome of this last conference of Putin and Trump. And I believe USA people has a lot of good people. They should avoid this kind of war criminal. Thank you.
Sharif, my is we should not have had a meeting on U.S. soil. Number two, we should not have given him a red carpet treatment, although his red carpet is a lot smaller. Thirdly, we should not allow him to speak. Okay, but we should have had the meeting in the United States. I think one of the problems is that he is viewed as a war criminal, and he has been indicted by the International Criminal Court. And one of the things that Putin is concerned about is meet and not get arrested. And I think that's one of the challenges you have. Now, in fairness, President Trump has talked over and over again about stopping the killing, not only with regard to the combatants, the people in the military, but also the civilians. I mean, he's talked about that over and over again. And you talk about why is Putin doing what he's doing? I think there are several reasons that he's doing what he's doing, and I think it's wrong. Okay, he's clearly in the wrong here. Okay, clearly in the wrong. One, views himself, in my opinion, as a modern day czar. And Putin has said publicly that the biggest mistake that, quote unquote, Russia has made in modern times was the breakup of the Soviet Union. And Ukraine used to be part of the Soviet Union, and therefore he views that as a huge loss, and he wants to try to be able to reverse the loss. The third thing, which a lot of people don't know, is guess what city was the capital of the Russian Empire for hundreds of years? The name of the city is Kyiv. And so, there are a number of reasons. What he did is wrong. And his current position, I believe, is wrong. I do believe that they ought to have a ceasefire and then start negotiating from that point. But that's a little bit more contextual sophistication with regard to what I think is going on and what I think was right and what I think was wrong.
Okay, we'll bring in to Toby because he hasn't spoken yet. We do need to listen to the progressive wing of our group. So progress to Toby.
But he's not so far left that he left America.
And the funny part is I'm not even that left. I'm just right. I try and be as right down the middle as possible. So, for example, we do have to set some baselines because a lot of things that we talk about on here, we tend to attribute only to one person or one political party. One, everybody wants to stop the killing. There's not one person that's advocating for killing. So we have to stop the idea that only Trump wants to stop the killing or only the Republican Party wants to stop the killing, because that is that is very disingenuous to start the argument off in the first place. Number two, the meeting that happened wasn't a meeting, and I completely agree with you, Dave, on that. It wasn't a meeting. It could have been an email. It could have been, they could have sent messages back and forth through whomever, because what they did was basically it was a show put on. Trump thought he was putting on a show of force, or that's the way that the party took it and the way they tried to push it out there. Oh, this is a show of force to Putin. Oh, we flew B-2 bombers above them. That really wasn't anything. He didn't care about that. What he wanted was to be seen on that stage with an American president. Trump walked across the stage to him. Trump allowed this man in the country. As Dr. Sharif pointed out, he is a war criminal. And he allowed this man to speak first for the host country, which is a show of dominance. It's a show. It was a show. Basically, Putin gets to put on, back to Russia, to put on more propaganda, keep his people in line, and so on and so forth. So that was bad to start with. There are no concessions Russia has to take. There's absolutely none. There weren't any that were offered. Russia's going to keep the land, if that's what Trump is already saying, because Putin is told, I don't know how that came about, but yes, he's told Putin that, yes, Russia can keep the land, and then Zelensky just has to agree to that. And the idea, because Trump even put it out today on his Truth Social, talking about, well, they can end the war or whatever. Zelensky just has the opportunity to do this by ceding this land. Again, Dave, I completely agree. I don't think Zelensky wants to do that. And number two, that's not going to be something that is going to stop the war or stop Putin from invading other nations, because what are we going to do then? Is, hey, look, to stop the war, you get to keep the land. So him reconstituting or reestablishing USSR, that's his purpose. I mean, he's upset about that, as you stated. But I think it all goes back to what Dr. Sharif kept talking about, is that, again, nobody thinks about the smaller people. And that happens all the time, from society to companies to big countries. Ukraine is being fleeced by Trump and by Putin. The minerals deal wasn't even a minerals deal. What it was is we're going to take whatever what is not ever or what is not already taken by Russia. We're going to try and take control of that. So now we're supposedly going to put boots on the ground as he's still bombing. He's not going to do anything. Trump has always backed down. Anytime Putin steps up, Trump has backed down. We were supposed to have sanctions on before. So I say all this. To point out, we had the opportunity to continually pushing with our allies, but our allies are backing away from the way that we are acting. And I believe, and I don't know, Dave, if you're with me on this one, is that the best way, throwing boots on the ground and promising NATO-like sanction or NATO-like protections. Well, if you're going to promise NATO-like protections, let them into NATO. Don't give me this two thing. What I'm asking is the best way to push Putin back into the corner and away from Ukraine is for our allies and to reestablish an alliance with those allies that are helping to reestablish a trust bond that has been broken with our allies, so our allies can utilize not only bringing in the defense force or bringing in more defense, even though they're actually putting in more defense than the U.S. is currently, and even before they were doing that as well, because we have the established numbers on that, because they were doing 60% and we were doing 40%. So again, if we could reconstitute that, I think we would have a better way of getting a ceasefire and getting a peace deal.
Well, let me mention a couple of things, then I have to go. I think the reason that you have several European leaders coming to Washington today, along with Zelensky, is to try to be able to create something along the lines of what you're talking about, Jacoby. Russia made it very clear, Putin, that he doesn't have a problem with Ukraine joining the European Union, fraudulent economic coalition. But he has drawn a red line, rightly or wrongly, that Ukraine cannot join NATO because that means that there is a treaty between over 30 countries with regard to. On the other hand, if we can get countries like the UK, Germany, France, Italy, and potentially one or two others to join the United States, those are by far the most powerful countries in NATO anyway. And so if you can end up achieving the substance of what needs to be achieved, which is a meaningful security guarantee, while avoiding a direct confrontation on the red line, that to me is a logical way to proceed. But I got to get going now. You all continue, and I look forward to hearing what the result is. Take care.
Okay. All right, thank you, David. We'll bring in Sasha Starr. He has a comment.
I just came across a recent publication by Axios. What they published is that about halfway in a meeting, Trump almost interrupted the meeting after Putin asked for 100% of Donetsk territory, Donetsk Oblast territory, which is part of Donbass. And Trump says there's no reason to continue when such requests are being made, and Putin then threw down or kind of backed away from this demand. It doesn't mean that he changed his mind, because ultimately he wants all Ukraine and Dnipro and Kharkiv and Odessa, everything. That's what he needs. However, at this point, due to the situation on the front line, Putin is not doing that well at all. What Ukraine is at any point is ready to strike at Russians, and including on their territory. So Putin also has a limited time opportunity to play with all his demands and so on. The only thing is what I said before. The only thing is what Trump cares is a Nobel Peace Prize. You know what? If Nobel Peace Prize, the nominee among the nominants, Trump could conduct very different and much more effective foreign policy.
Sasha, I still find it very ironic that so many people want the Nobel Peace Prize when Alfred Nobel is remembered as the inventor of dynamite, responsible for the killing of more people than arguably an invention in history. And we name him a Peace Prize after a man who invented dynamite. Amazing.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that is pretty true. And it's very ironic.
I do think Sasha points out a great point, though. This, and that's one thing we tend to forget in these peace talks a lot, because we go to the idea that, hey, we're focused on not killing. Is that really what Trump is focused on? Because he is desperate for that Nobel Peace Prize. He's calling different world leaders for that. So is it really about, I mean, yes, everything stopping of the killing so he can win a prize, or for the people's lives to be better?
Words of Stephen Witkoff. Witkoff is saying now, after talking to Putin for an hour, 2 hours, whatever, is that there is no problem to time to continue fighting. So if that negotiations of an overall peace will take, say, 6 months, maybe 12 months, maybe 24 months, it doesn't matter how much, and fighting is continuous, what kind of peace talks they are? They are distractions.
That's starting to look like an example of Orwellian double speak or double think.
Yeah.
To speak two contradictory ideas at the same time.
Is that the idea of Trump's administration put out the idea that they were going to do a trilateral meeting next. Well, then Putin already said that the next meeting might be in Moscow. We already know that, again, as you said, Sasha, as you just said, Doc, this is Orwellian.
Yeah, I mean,
it's very Orwellian and everything like that. But if I remember correctly, isn't Finland, which is one of the people that is coming with Zelensky, part of the Nobel Peace Prize? So that might be one of the things that he's going to whisper in his ear, meaning Trump, is give me the Nobel Peace Prize and all along time together and everything along those lines. So that is one of those possibilities and all along those lines. I did like what Dr. Sharif said and everything. And I remember, and I just wanted y'all's thoughts about this, and I was going to ask David, but anybody wants to jump on this, including you, Dr. Lockwood and Sasha. A lot of countries seem to be moving to the center and to a lot of division between what was under U.S. control or the West control and what was under Russian control, and all along those lines. And we just saw the recent election in Bolivia, which is to the south of us in South America. The socialists have lost, and it's going to be between a centrist candidate and a far-right candidate, and all along those lines. So with the loss of control from the socialists. Anybody?
Yes. I'll jump
Who
on
wants to sleep on that grenade? Jitova, you always jump on that grenade.
Mark,
You just like loud noises.
I do.
Mark, when you read these long questions, very often you're providing your own answers as well. So it's difficult to address questions because it's a question.
You have to answer it. Yep.
Choose.
Well, I don't know that I have the answer. Like I said, the Russians implied that they are still wanting to control a lot of the country. I mean, look what they're doing in Africa.
The
Look what China's doing in Africa.
is that it's a mixed bag. In 2024, 25 plus of the 33 elections swung to it swung against the incumbent party, regardless of be it center right, far right, center left, far left. They all swung the opposite direction because people were mad at not only immigration, people were mad at inflation. That was a global thing. So yes, it's a mixed bag. People are swinging. So my guess, and I'll put it out there, I don't think with what happened in Canada, because remember, it was the Trump effect that actually made the election in Canada. And I think the Trump effect will also hit Bolivia. Therefore, the centrists will win, not the far right candidate will win.
Interesting to see that.
First, back to Putin and Trump meeting, because at this point I don't think there are any other ideas to discuss right now. What I'd like to mention is that Trump is in a quite difficult situation, and it seems to me that Putin understands it very well. What I mean by difficult situation? What levers, really two important ones. Number one is the economic sanctions against Russia, and furthermore, countries, even more important, that are purchasing Russian oil and gas products. Lever number two is providing strong military weapons backup to Ukraine. Let's go one by one. Number one is sanctions. Because of it could be, several months ago, it could have been very strong argument. It's all-out war. I'm talking about tariffs war against all the world, actually. Some countries have made some deals with him. Some other countries, including important ones like China and France, and it's ongoing problem for Trump. I'm not going to elaborate on that, but if you're following this, you know what I'm talking about. Even in case of Canada, it's almost complete boycott of all products. It's empty departure halls in the airport to fly to United States. There are no people, there are no flight attendants, there's nothing. So China is, okay, so he's got, another 90 days pause. It's not, nothing will happen. China doesn't care much about US sanctions at all. In fact, at the beginning, if you remember, China imposed itself 147% tariffs on the United States, and Trump had to back out. So the sanctions is definitely not. So let's come to the second one. Probably it's a military support of Ukraine, sending all kinds of weapons and so on. Well, Trump is very reluctant to do it. Furthermore, there are some countries like China, like North Korea, like Iran to a lesser extent, and several other countries, so-called collective South, that will definitely provide Russia support, whether it's weapons or finances or anything else. So that level is not working very well. So Putin, who understands all that, and therefore he's not scared of anything. In fact, he completely reversed Trump's mind on the ceasefire question. He didn't yield to Trump at all. So Trump has to go all the way, number one, to invite Putin on the American soil, to give him red carpet treatment, to have talks with him and his people, and going out empty-handed, nothing, zero. That just tells me, while for several months there were a lot of Ukrainians being killed by Russians, and Trump was dancing around Putin this way and that way. Here is a Witkoff, here is a South Witkoff, and so on. And result, big fat zero.
Hey, Sasha, Kim asked you a couple of questions that we never got to and everything. She heard that some of the countries are banning the U.S. dollar. She wanted to know whether that's true. And she also asked a question, which I know a lot of people have asked, which is, we lied about the guarantee of Ukraine's security. So why should the Ukrainians ever trust us ever again in terms of these negotiations? So those were two questions from one of the founders of the network that we never got to. So any things that either you or Jonathan want to address to those two questions?
Okay, speaking about US dollar, you cannot use US dollar. Just recently, I was in Europe. I was in 4 countries. Never in any one of these 4 countries, Poland, Latvia, Czech Republic, and Spain, nowhere US dollar was accepted, not in stores or restaurants or anywhere. You have to exchange US dollar into the local currency, and then local currency you can make your payments and buy stuff. Same as Russian rubles and the same as any other currency. Now, the second question from Kim was why Ukraine would trust US. Who told you that? Ukraine doesn't trust US and will never trust US and will not rely, frankly, has enough problems inside the country and outside just to get out of this business. Forget about your Nobel Peace Prize. Just get on with your business and try to keep your presidency afloat. Otherwise, you will not leave as a president even until fall.
Just to play Rick's role and making sure we're on the up and up. Tanzania is the only one that actually bans the U.S. dollar, and that was just a recent thing. So everywhere there is no other location that outright bans it.
Oh, why didn't you talk about Russia? You can't use US dollar in Russia. In fact, it will be confiscated from you, and you might end up in local jail.
Yeah, usually they just don't accept the US dollar. I mean, sometimes you have to just deal with their currency, whatever their currency is.
Yeah. But they're not necessarily banned with the thing.
The only one that actually outright bans it is Tanzania.
And I have no idea why Tanzania does that. Rick isn't here, so we don't have our status position to figure that out. So, Dr. Sharif, since you're still here, what are your solutions? How should the U.S. move forward given this conversation?
You are asking for this Ukraine and this Russia war, or you have different background? What is the solution you are asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you. You represent half the population over there.
I'm from very small country and from
very small million people. That's small. Come on. You have more people than Russia.
No, I'm for small people. I'm for small people. I believe that USA has a lot of good people like you, and they should welcome the small countries people like me and develop a strong alignment. Because what we observe in this meeting, honestly speaking, USA has open society. So what we see is completely actually ignoring Ukraine. Someone come, let's say example, I'm very much worried, let's say suddenly from this meeting, maybe Narendra Modi inspired, and he thought, okay, I will to Bangladesh, and then I will kill Bangladeshi people, and then Trump will invite me to solve this problem and get Nobel Prize.
You can get a Nobel Prize. I like that. Hey,
I want to finish. I want to finish. The second word that, okay, I will take over Malaysia. And if I take over Malaysia, I kill people and I do these things, and then Trump going to invite me and he will Nobel Prize. So no problem. There is no law. There is no rules. So small countries, small people, we need alignment. Maybe Pontiff can take this initiative.
Well, speaking of that, just really quickly, Dr. Since they was asked, and I did the role of break this time, Tanzania apparently banned the use of the U.S. dollar and other foreign currencies for domestic transactions to strengthen its national currency. So they actually said that was an oversimplification to say that it was banned, but it was their way to get people to go to the Tanzanian shilling as sole legal tender. So in order to reinforce the local currency usage and improve their monetary policy. So they're forcing people to use their own dollar.
Okay, that's fair enough. So, Brad, what are your thoughts? How can this play out, or is this going to?
Well, I know I've been rather quiet on the pod, but it's great to meet you all. I can only speak as the average 30-year-old American voter here. I'm looking at Trump's actions today as something that is very strong for the world, very, very good for the world. And again, as an American voter, I'm looking at his recent agreements with Azerbaijan. I'm looking at Thailand and Cambodia. We have momentum. I know a lot of people here may have varying views on that, but to the average American voter, they're not necessarily in detail that we've brought up today. I think we're getting hung up on who spoke first on the meeting. The fact that it was in the United States, I kind of believe that it probably should have been held at a more neutral site, because in reality, we're looking to not necessarily get ourselves involved, but by bringing it here, we're kind of bringing it here. So in reality, I'm just kind of looking at this. We have the meeting here in 3 minutes. It should be starting very, very, very soon. But in terms of the average American voter, I'm looking at this as a very, very strong position that we're in, simply as a result of all the nations are coming here. Everyone's looking to the United States to broker this agreement. We have brokered agreements. Trump has a Trump way of doing things that nobody understands. I think we can all agree on that. So I'm very, very interested to see what the next hour has to bring for the world.
Yeah, and we are too, and we're at the hour, so we want to thank our special guest, Brian Carter, who is debut on the Pod TV network, and of course, Brian, you've been in Bangladesh, right? Okay, and let's talk Canada and Tony from the United States, and Mark Lee from the United States. Of course, the Honorable David Walker, who's in Washington, D.C., same with John Lockwood, and unfortunately they had to leave early. But we'll see you next week on economics.